details. I think we're ready.
I think we've got it.
Great. Thank you, Mary.
Good morning, everybody. Have a good night last night? Awesome. I'm going to switch tacks a little bit in the talk today. It's not directly about biomass or ecology or economics. I'm going to talk about the importance of collaboration in restoring the West, and of course, that has to deal with biomass in the long run. So I'm going to talk a little bit about who we are, in case you don't know, why we chose to focus on collaboration, some of the legislative and administrative efforts that are propelling the movement forward, if you want to call it that. Briefly run through some necessary elements for success and talk about what we've learned over the course of the last 10 years in helping collaborative efforts. And then if I can make the technology work, I'm going to do a video so you get a sense of one practitioner's view. So, the National Forest Foundation, we were formed by Congress in 1991. We're one of 4 or 5 congressionally chartered organizations. We were put in place to partner with the Forest Service. We sort of reformed in 2001, and our mission since then has been to engage Americans in the stewardship and enjoyment of the national forest system. We do this through a number of different grant programs that focus on on-the-ground activities like watershed restoration, forest restoration, recreational enhancements, wildlife issues. And we have a big program, a capacity building program, to help build collaborative efforts across the country that are dealing with the national forest system. We also, on the collaborative side, we do technical assistance and peer learning, both for the Forest Service and for their nonprofit partners. So why did we choose to focus on collaboration in 2001? It's because when we looked across the landscape and saw what some of the struggles and opportunities were, the only place where we felt some positive forward momentum was happening was where there was good collaboration on the ground. So our definition of collaboration, it comes in many different forms. Our definition is that it's a voluntary process, often with interests at the table, excuse me, who are can be in conflict with one another. And they agree to enter into civil dialogue to collectively consider the possibilities for improving natural resource management that benefits both the environment and the surrounding communities. So this is sort of my opinion on why collaboration has become important and increasingly important as we go forward. And it's got its beginnings from the start of the conservation movement with the dichotomy between John Muir and Gifford Pinchot, where Muir was about in the simplistic form, Muir was about the protection of the environment where humans were separate, but they came to enjoy it. Whereas Pinchot was about the sustainable management of the natural resources for the greatest good for the greatest number. And that dichotomy still exists today. Also, there is a lot of conflicting science. Sometimes people cringe when I say this because they believe that their science is the right one and everybody else's is wrong. But on most issues, there are a multitude of opinions, and when you get people with those opinions together at the table, you often develop a good solution. As you know, values of the public are widely different, and when you're dealing with public lands, you have to incorporate all of those values in your decision-making process. And this is probably a strong statement, no longer technical solutions. There are technical solutions to biomass issues, but I would say for many of the land management issues, they are not technical solutions, they're social solutions that need to be developed. Restoration is a fairly new concept. We're still learning what we're doing, and the more people that you have at the table learning together, you will likely develop good adaptation going forward. A big reason for collaboration is to help heal deep social tensions that have erupted over national forest management. And also, when you have people from different backgrounds at the table, you have a better ability to address ecological, social, and economic issues at the same time. I'll run through these kind of quickly. It's amazing to me as we work in this field, we often think that change happens really slowly. I would say on the collaboration front for federal issues, change has happened at somewhat lightning speed. And I know that I've missed some here, but it really started to come to fruition around the time of the Northwest Forest Plan. Funny story, in the mid-1990s, the Forest Service put together a collaboration team to really look at their rules and regulations and their mode of operation and try and figure out some ways of doing business differently. It's the first time I'm aware of that they had both agency personnel and external people on that committee. And the time was not right. That report was done. It was put on the shelf, and I don't even know if anybody can find it anymore. But at least it was an initial effort. Northwest Forest Plan, they poured tons of money into the Pacific Northwest for rural communities to try and help them transition from the timber program, what it was, to what it was going to be. Through those funds to those rural communities, they built a lot of capacity for collaboration. Then came the 7th American Forest Congress, where for the first time since Forest Congresses started, there was a communities committee, because people around the country began to feel very strongly that the health of the forest and the health of communities went together. And to the best of my knowledge, the Communities Committee is the only one that's still slightly functioning from the 7th American Forest Congress effort. Many of the other ones you've heard through people mentioning yesterday, all have some component of collaboration in them: stewardship contracting, the New Mexico program, secure rural schools, forest planning rule, at least in its current design, has a big component of collaboration. And as Dr. O'Glaughlin mentioned yesterday, WGA and the National Fire Plan. So what have been some of the changes over time in the last 15 to 20 years? Most efforts started to try and heal those deep divisions in the communities. There was a time when, in many rural communities, environmentalists were burned in effigy in community squares, and Forest Service employees felt unsafe to walk in their uniform down Main Street. And public meetings had to have law enforcement there because so many people packed guns. That has greatly changed in most areas of the country, largely due to collaborative efforts. Many of the efforts were started in rural communities. Many started at a very, very small scale, the 100 to 500 acres, in order to help rebuild that trust. Since that time, there's been a huge proliferation of collaborative groups. I would say in '96, you could count them on two hands, those that were operating well. Now they're all over the country of all different shapes and sizes. In many places, groups that had been focusing on ranger districts are now coming together at a larger scale to begin to address that landscape scale. And in other places, groups are forming and starting to work on that landscape scale. There's many more regional and statewide efforts. There are fewer skeptics, although you'll see, and I know many of you feel this way in the room, there are still skeptics out there on all sides of the debate. There have been reduced appeals and litigation in areas. They're not eliminated, but they've been reduced in many places. And there's even coordinated policy efforts to try and propel this forward. And I'll point to the Rural Voices for Conservation Coalition that's managed by Sustainable Northwest out of Portland, Oregon. Again, they exist across the country. We have a panel this afternoon that's going to go a little more in depth on a couple of these. I just wanted to put up the slide to show that they really are all over the country, including in the east, and they range from like Wallowa Resources, which really focuses almost at a county level in northeastern Oregon, to the Northeastern Washington Forestry Coalition, which deals with the Colville National Forest. I'm going to run through these really quickly. We have a website that has a number of tools on it if you're interested in collaboration, that talks about what are the elements for success, how to put how to put good efforts together, what are the kind of protocols you need to think about. And some of these are fairly obvious. You need to start out with clear objectives and agreed upon scope. What are you working on? Everybody has to have that mutual benefits and mutual responsibility feeling, because if you don't come to the table with that, you're not going to get very far. You've got to have respect for the process. And in real estate, you know, the moniker is location, location, location. In collaboration, it's communication, communication, communication. You really can't have enough. You've got to be inclusive. You've really got to invite people to the table that you may not like at all and you certainly don't agree with. You got to comply with all of the legal requirements. It doesn't get you around that issue. You've got to have incentives to participate, accountable representation, equal access to information, scientific knowledge, budgetary information, all that stuff. Transparency, and it's really hard to do without sufficient resources to keep the effort going. The lessons we've learned that are really important is, and probably first and foremost, is that you have to have a good neutral facilitator. If not, there are a lot of people who are hesitant to come to the table because they feel their voices won't be heard, and then what's the point? What's the incentive? You've got to show some kind of success or face burnout of your participants, and it's good to decide up front what that success might be. You have to be willing to adapt the process. Just because you have protocols and operating procedures that you agreed to 5 years ago doesn't mean they need to change as you learn what works and doesn't. You've got to create a good transition framework. One of the biggest struggles of collaborative groups is when agency line officers move to a new position, and all of that social capital is potentially lost. This is true when leaders in the community or nonprofits also transition, and to talk about that up front before people leave is really important. Good operating protocols where participants know the rules. And something that's becoming more prevalent recently is that a lot of people join collaborative efforts because they wanted to come to that agreement on what should happen on the ground. And then they think, yay, agreement, and they sort of lose their heavy participation. But if you don't go from agreement and follow through implementation and monitoring, I think you're going to have a lot of disappointment from some of your participants. And you have to have an understanding of Forest Service and community capacity, because not all areas have the ability to take this on at certainly large scales that are needed for biomass utilization. And sometimes areas just aren't ripe. So if I can get the technology to work.
Can let's start with you just introducing yourself and telling me what collaborative you work with.
Okay. Yeah. My name is Annie Schmidt, and I am the director of the Chumstick Wildfire Stewardship Coalition, and we're located in north central Washington, work on the watershed level.
And how long have you been involved with Chumstick?
I'm just finishing my second year.
And what is your role?
I am the director, and as I am part-time, that spans everything from making the coffee to more substantial tasks as staff.
So director of coffee and other substantial tasks?
Yes, director of coffee and other substantial tasks. And other duties as assigned.
Other duties as assigned. What issues is the collaborative involved in?
We primarily work on issues of forest resilience with an emphasis on wildfire and wildfire protection. We collaborate pretty frequently with the Wenatchee River Ranger District, and we do work on private lands as well. We have a pretty robust private land cost share program.
And what have been the group's greatest challenges? What are the things that keep you up at night?
What are the things that keep me up at night? I think I worry the most about people's level of engagement. Are they coming to meetings because they feel like they have to? Are they coming to meetings because they're passionate about it? Are they not coming to meetings for some reason? I worry the most that we're not serving each other as well as we could.
Why would you do such a thing? Why would once?
Well,
Why do you feel that people should be serving?
well, because, okay, so the best definition I ever heard of collaboration was laboring together to achieve something greater than what any one person could achieve alone. And I really like that aspect of laboring together, because I think it's work. You know, collaboration is work, and it's hard, and it's messy, and when things are messy, sometimes you feel like they're not going well. But that's not necessarily true in collaborative efforts. And so sometimes the mess will keep me up at night, even though the mess probably means we're succeeding at something.
So, what does success look like?
Well, I think that's different for every collaborative group, but
For you guys.
for us, success looks like a resilient forest in the Chumstick watershed and an equally resilient community. And I think that those things are very linked. If we can make the forest healthy, the community will be healthy. That would be success.
How do you get there?
Well, you stay at it. You stay at it. You dig in, and you go after the hard discussions. And you have to work with the people that you think are like you, and the people that don't agree with you at all. And you have to find that space where you can both agree on something, and you can all agree on something. And that's where it starts to get messy, because it's not a homogenous group of stakeholders. Everybody's different, and when that kind of group comes together, that's the biggest challenge, but it's the greatest potential for success, because when all of those different perspectives get focused on one issue, you can really get to a place that you couldn't have alone, and that's, I guess, the laboring together aspect. So,
what are the biggest accomplishments you've achieved so far?
well, we recently signed a letter of support for the Forest Service. Not an appeal letter, not an objection letter, but a letter of support where the stakeholders, after reviewing an EA that they've been heavily involved with, said, we believe that this is the best course of action. We're committed to supporting it in public, in private, and with the caveat that we remain involved in the following ways. And implementation and monitoring was on that list. And so people were so committed to the project that not only did they just say it's great, thumbs up, you did a good job, but it's great and we want to do more. And I mean, it doesn't get any better than that.
Why is that so significant?
Well, one watershed over, a very similar project was appealed. and they didn't have the collaborative effort, and these are the same stakeholders and the same, involved parties. And with that kind of collaboration, we avoided the fate of the other project, and we saved time and in the Forest Service internal review process for appeals, but more than that, the feelings of the people involved in our project, the Chumstick project, versus the feelings of those involved in the other project are completely different. We have confidence that we came together to develop the best project possible, given the requirements of the project. I mean, that was as good as it was going to get, and we're all committed to it. And that wasn't the case in other. That's not always the case, and so that's why we feel like that was one of our biggest successes.
That's all I've got.
Okay.
Is there anything you want to add, or?
You know me, I always want to add something. No, I would say that one of the reasons that we appreciate our partnership with the NFF is that the NFF doesn't just fund an effort and walk away, and to have the emphasis on capacity building and peer learning and support that the NFF provides is a pretty unique thing among funders, and it makes better organizations and it makes a better product. And I think that if there were more organizations doing what you do, the work that we do would be a lot easier. And so, we'd just like to say thanks.
Great. Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay.